what's up, Nashville? This is Beau with the Free Speech Podcast, brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your broker if you are a seller of commercial real estate in Nashville or the Southeast. It is our job to go out into the market and get you the highest price the market will pay. Today's show, we've got 10 different stories for you. We're going to mix in some sports today. We've kind of gotten away from discussing sports. We're going to bring some sports back today. The remainder of the stories we're going to cover are Nashville commercial real estate related. I'm going to give you a quick overview of each of the stories and then we'll get into it. Berry Hill Music Campus update. There is a massive assemblage of land in Berry Hill and a $250 million film and music studio campus plan there. It's been in the works for a number of years. I'm going to give you an update on where they stand today. Plan for the new tallest tower to be located in Sobro. So a new planned development which would become the new tallest tower in South Broadway. A Nashville office update, so just a high-level office update of how the so when I talk about office, I'm really talking about big office buildings that are multi-tenant. I'll give you a quick overview on that. I can tell you we're at the highest vacancy rate in the last 20 years today. Then I'm going to bring you a Memphis Grizzlies update. You know, I don't know about you, but I like when people summarize for me the moves some of these teams are making. My life is too busy to keep up with everything that's going on, so I'm going to bring you up to date on all the moves the Memphis Grizzlies have made this offseason. An apartment development stalls, and now the land is listed for resale. So this is a common story that we've been telling over the past few months, whereby these big developments just aren't getting done, and these developers are turning around and flipping that land, getting out from underneath those deals. Some of those deals they've been working on for 5 or 10 years before throwing in the towel. A 38-story tower pivots from apartments to condos. I think this is really interesting. We'll get into that. Then I'm going to bring you a Nashville SC update, right? So the professional soccer team here in Nashville is having an outstanding season. I'm going to bring you up to date on where they stand today. West Nashville condos that started construction, and get this, 2018, are now finally complete. Unbelievable. A 7-year project to build condos in West Nashville. The most expensive land development on Lower Broadway has stalled out. They paid the highest price anyone's ever paid per square foot of dirt, and that project is now stalling out like many other projects across Nashville. A 2020 development on White Bridge Pike is now finally gaining steam 5 years later. So we're kind of staying on theme. You know, over the past few months, we've been giving developers their props, right? It is a very, very difficult business to be in, and it has been extremely difficult since interest rates started rising years ago. So many of these developments have stalled out. Many of these developments are taking much longer than usual. Many of these developments have the developers just throwing in the towel and are reselling the land to the next guy. So that's one of the common themes of the show recently, and we'll continue to build on that. Let's get into it. Berry Hill Music Campus update. A $250 million film and music studio campus is planned for Berry Hill, the biggest thing to ever happen to Berry Hill. If you're unfamiliar with this neighborhood, it's located south of the city on 65. I've sold a lot of property in that area. You know, the main feature there is it's easily accessible from all directions from the metro area. So you don't have to go all the way into the city and fight traffic to get there. It's close enough that you feel like you're close to the city, but far enough you avoid traffic. And it's got all of the different interstates intersecting there which provides easy access. So most of the interest in Berry Hill has been location based, but now it's kind of got, it has been historically a kind of music row light for the music business, and that is why they're targeting this huge campus there. The multi-building mixed-use project is expected to house Universal Music Group operations and include recording studios, scoring stages, and an audio research and development building. The roughly 4.14-acre future campus will comprise multiple properties on both Columbine Place and East Iris Drive near Columbine Park. These are 17 little parcels that were assembled over the last 3 years. So for 3 years, they've been gobbling up all of these little properties. They've assembled them into a 4.14 acre assemblage. The team has not publicly provided any updates since late 2023, which is not a great sign. But, quote, the project is still in the planning stage and moving forward, unquote. The project could include 93,500 square feet of studios, 115,000 square feet of education and office space, 3,200 square feet of retail, 20,500 square feet for 2 restaurant spaces, and 4 residential dwelling units that they're calling producer cottages. So, a lot going on here. 17 small properties assembled to make this deal possible. That is a lot of work. 17 different sellers, 17 different transactions, just to get the land lined up to, move to the next phase of the development. 93,000 square feet of studios, 115,000 square feet of education/office space, a little bit of retail, 2 restaurant spaces, and 4 dwelling units planned for the cost of $250 million, which is going to change the vibe of Berry Hill forever. Next, a tower is now planned in Sobro that would be the tallest tower standing today. A 53-story hotel and residential building would rank as Nashville's tallest skyscraper if standing today. This entire project, 53 stories, all on less than 1 acre at 319 Peabody Street. The developer, Chicago-based DAC Developments. Some of the concept drawings have included the term intercontinental in those, so perhaps the hotel component could be a new intercontinental hotel. The building will be between 650 and 700 feet tall. The AT&T Tower ranks as Nashville's tallest structure, standing 617 feet, even though they're kind of cheating because they include the decorative spires that are on top of that building, which I think are glorified antennas, right? So you'll have to fact check me on that, but it being AT&T Tower, 2 very unusual decorative spires, I think those are likely antennas. Giarratana is planning a residential building called Paramount, which will rise 750 square feet. So while this would be the largest building if standing today, by the time it gets done, it will be competing with Paramount, and Paramount will be slightly higher, about 50 feet higher. The future high-rise would offer 400 hotel rooms, 104 condominiums, and 20,000 square feet of ground-level retail. So a very cool project. It is going to be a huge tower that's going to stand out in that submarket. Now I'm going to give you a high-level update of the Nashville office market. And when I'm describing for you here, I'm not talking about the small standalone office buildings. I'm talking about those large multi-tenant investor type office buildings. As borrowing costs and vacancy levels have increased, office investment has slowed in Nashville. During 21 and 22, quarterly transaction volume averaged $334 million, across an average of 84 transactions. So we're kind of setting a baseline from which to compare what's happening recently. During 21 and 22, every quarter, 334 million of Nashville office buildings on average sold. Now, since the start of 2023, there's only been 126 million of activity. So 334 million down to 126 million in only 45 transactions per quarter. So we're down from 84 transactions to 45 transactions. The weak investor demand is mainly due to sluggish occupier leasing activity, a combination of ever-changing office-using needs and an influx of speculative supply continues to weigh on rent growth and vacancy levels. The demand for newly built office space has not been enough to offset the over 1 million square feet constructed over the past year, with another 1.5 million square feet set to be completed by the end of 2025. The Nashville office vacancy rate now stands at 12.4%, its highest level in the past 20 years. Nashville's office rent growth has slowed considerably, gaining only 0.9% over the past year. Additional factors for declining investor interest include stubbornly high interest rates. I agree. I pray every night that we'll finally get some interest rate relief. My prayers have not been answered thus far, but I think we're getting close. Volatile quarterly net absorption and a smaller average lease size as occupiers try to right-size their space amid changing employee needs. So we've got a lot going on here, right? We've got office tenants requiring less space. We've got a lack of rent growth, right? We've got a lot of new construction coming online, and we've got our highest vacancy level in the past 20 years. So this is a tricky environment for Nashville office building developers, many of which are stalling these projects right now while they see how this all shakes out. And whether or not they want to stall these projects or not, their capital, right, their equity and their debt is forcing them to stall these projects out because you can't line up all the money you need to get them out of the ground. So we've got a lot of ground in Nashville with proposed office uses where these developers are just sitting on that land and paying those big carrying costs. You know, because to build an office tower in Nashville, you're buying some very expensive land, generally not paying all cash. Generally that's financed. So there's a carrying cost associated. So just imagine carrying this expensive land for years and years and years while you're waiting for the market to improve so you can go out and get your debt and equity capital so you can move forward with your project. Like I said, it's a difficult time to be a developer in Nashville. Everybody got to eat for a long time, but right now only the most well-capitalized guys are moving forward with these projects, and even they are moving much more slowly than they wish they were moving. All right, let's change it up a little bit. I'm going to give you a sports update. The Memphis Grizzlies, what have they been doing this offseason? Well, if you remember, last year they finished 8th in the Western Conference, 48 wins, 34 losses. They went on to lose in the first round of the playoffs to the eventual champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, finished 8th in the Western Conference. Perhaps it's time to make some changes, which they did. They traded their all-star guard, Desmond Bane, to the Orlando Magic, receiving Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, the 16th pick in the 2025 draft, plus 4 future first-round picks. So that's quite a haul for their all-star guard, Desmond Bane. They also acquired a second pick in this year's draft, the number 11 overall pick, which they used to select someone named Cedric Coward, who I'd never heard of, from the Portland Trailblazers by trading 4 draft picks. They gave up 2 firsts and 2 seconds to get 1 pick, the 11th overall, to take Cedric Coward. I hope he's worth it. They also traded center Jay Huff, who I've never heard of, to the Indiana Pacers. In exchange, they got a second-round pick and a pick swap. Now, one of the biggest things they did in the offseason is they signed Jaren Jackson Jr. to a max contract, 5 years, $240 million. I don't love this deal. I'll tell you, my instincts are telling me that is an overpay. You know, I suppose they had the choice between Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., and they went with Jaren Jackson Jr. and gave him $240 million. Santi Aldama was retained on a 3-year, $52 million deal after the Grizzlies matched a restricted free agent offer. No disrespect to the Grizzlies, also never heard of him. They also picked up Ty Jerome, who was a stud six man for the Warriors last year, and Cam Spencer, a two-way guard, were both signed, adding depth on the perimeter. Tuamas Lisalo was promoted from interim to full-time head coach after the firing of Taylor Jenkins in late March. So I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce that name. Perhaps he has a nickname he goes by. I would assume he does, because that's a mouthful. Now, they had 2 picks this year in the NBA draft. Like I mentioned, they took Cedric Coward with the 11th pick, and they went out and drafted Yang Hansen with the 16th pick, who is a Asian guy who was I think a 7-footer, which is an interesting choice at number 16. So I'm not sure about those draft picks. I'm not sure about that max extension. You know, I don't know if the team got better. Perhaps they got better from a financial standpoint. Perhaps they got better from a future draft capital standpoint. But I'm not sure this team does any better in the Western Conference this year. Let's see if they can finish higher than 8th, and perhaps they would consider these deals a net positive for the Grizzlies. All right, let's keep moving. An apartment development stalls and the land is now listed for sale. As I mentioned, this is a common occurrence. A Cumberland River area property located north of downtown Nashville and once eyed for an apartment development is now for sale for $7 million. The main address of the 15-acre site is 869 West Trinity Lane. Cove Residential Holdings paid $2.9 million for what at the time was approximately a 24-acre site, right? So they bought a 24-acre site. They're now listing a 15-acre site. They bought the 24-acre site for $2.9 million. They are listing the 15-acre site for $7 million. Cove had the property rezoned to specific plan in June 2020. Now, this is important. So anytime you want to use a property other than the way it is currently zoned, the path of least resistance in Metro Nashville is to pursue a specific plan whereby you design how you're going to use that property, and you go in front of Metro and you try to get approval for your specific plan. So you aren't really rezoning to a different classification code. You're rezoning to your specific plan. This is very, very normal in Nashville today. And as long as the use that you're targeting for that site, as long as Metro believes that is a good use for that site, you can get specific plan approval. That rezoning, that specific plan rezoning, was to have allowed a development of up to 427 units. Then in December of 2024, Cove sold about 8.75 acres of the overall roughly 24-acre site to Elmington Capital Group for $6.8 million. So they buy 24 acres. They sell 8 acres for $6.8 million, and they list the remainder for $7 million. If they would get that, we're talking about $14 million in sales for a property you paid $2.9 million for. Elmington is expected to break ground this year on an apartment building on the property. Now, Cove seeks to sell the remaining approximately 15 acres. The property has a history. TTF Investments paid $1.57 million for the property in 2017 and planned 62 single-family cottages for the site. So it went from $1.57 million to $2.9 million to very soon about $14 million without any work to actually construct anything, any shovels in the ground whatsoever at all. So a few folks have made money on that transaction without ever putting a shovel in the ground. Ain't real estate great? Even if you can't move forward with your development because you can't line up all your capital, you can still make money on a lot of these deals. A 38-story tower pivots from apartments to condos. This is really interesting to me. Nashville-based development company Giartana is converting the apartments in its 38-story prime high-rise to condominiums. So the project is called Prime. One-bedroom units are now priced at $425,000, two bedrooms at $925,000, and penthouses at $1.75 million. Located at 805 Church Street, there are 350 residences in this mixed-use skyscraper with a Pagani vehicle showroom planned for the ground level space. I don't know what Pagani is, but that sounds like a cool use of the ground floor. So what's interesting to me about this is this apartment building actually opened in 2024. To date, it is only 40% leased. So you opened last year, you're only 40% leased. Your leasing is really stalling out, probably because of the cost of the units, yeah? So now, after you've kind of accepted this isn't going to work as an apartment building, you're pivoting and offering to sell these same units that were planned to be used as apartments as condos. Existing renters will be given the first option to buy their units. So you open a trophy skyscraper apartment building, you give up at 40% lease and pivot to condo sales. So that's an interesting thing to do. First of all, condo owners generally don't want to share space with tenants. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not giving an opinion on, but generally that's true. Generally, condo owners want to be surrounded by other owners, which is why there's so much pushback against Airbnb type use. But nevertheless, we'll see how this goes. $425 for a one bedroom, $925 for a two bedroom. We'll see if that works for them. I wish them luck. It's a very cool project, a very impressive developer here in Nashville. All right, let's flip back to sports very briefly for a Nashville SC update. We need to give them credit where credit is due. They are now second in the Eastern Conference standings with 41 points. If you don't know how soccer works, because for a long time I didn't know until my daughter started playing soccer, and then I had to learn how all this works. You get points based on win, lose, or draw. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss. And the rankings are then established based on the number of points that you've earned, not on wins and losses, but points. Nashville SC has 41 points, which puts them just behind FC Cincinnati with 42 points and just ahead of Philadelphia Union, considered a rival, with 40 points. All of those teams have more points than the top three teams in the Western Conference. Now, Nashville SC is on a 14-game unbeaten streak. So that means they haven't lost. That means they've won or they've received a draw. Did you know Hani Mukhtar, who my family knows personally, who is a very, very good person, very kind person. He gives a lot of attention to fans and young players like my daughters. Very, very cool guy who you should root for. He's scored more goals than anyone else in the MLS since 2000, right? Nashville SC has a goal difference of plus 14, meaning they've outscored their opponents by 14 goals so far. Sam Surridge, the striker, rolls on as MLS's top scorer with 16 goals. Keeper Joe Willis is among lead leaders in shutouts, reinforcing their defensive backbone. Nashville SC is enjoying one of its strongest seasons yet, holding a top 2 position in the Eastern Conference. They blend a potent attack led by Surridge, creative midfield led by Haney, and defensive stability. The challenge now is maintaining momentum through the stretch run. So, Nashville SC Stadium is very, very cool. If you haven't checked it out, you should go see a game. Nashville SC is on a real roll right now. After a very disappointing season last year where they got almost no attention, they had trouble filling seats. They're now really cranking this season, so root on Nashville SC. Next, West Nashville condos started construction in 2018 and are now finally complete. Construction of Woodmont Boulevard's 36-unit The Manning began in 2018. It is essentially completed with just 4 units having been sold. Chartwell Properties developed the site with the 36 units. In addition to the 4 residences that have seen closings, 19 additional units are under contract. One of those units sold for $3.6 million, which gives you an idea of kind of where the price point is. This is a very, very luxurious condo development. The Manning includes 2 main components, one of 7 stories called the North Wing at 22 units, and the other of 4 floors called the South Wing at 14 units, in addition to a concierge building segment that connects the 2 wings. On-site construction paused in early 2024 after Killian Construction Company, the previous general contractor, ceased its involvement with the development. Now keep in mind there are no lawsuits or bankruptcy filings related to this effort. So anytime you see a project delayed so substantially, you're probably thinking lawsuits or bankruptcy. That's not what's happened here. Southern Building Group was hired in mid-2024 to finish the construction. The original version of the Manning, announced in 2007, offered a 10-story building, a 6-story building, and a 3-story building, also with a collective 36 units. In early 2008, construction start was originally targeted for that iteration of the development. However, the project was sidelined because of the Great Recession. When work started in 2018, a completion date of late 2021 had been eyed, with the pandemic delaying the effort. So this project has been in the works since 2007, okay? It is 2025. If you think it's an easy thing to bring commercial property, or in this case, multi-tenant condos, out of the ground, you don't have to look that far to find evidence that there's nothing easy about it. They've been trying to get this done for almost 20 years, and now they're finally crossing the finish line, selling these 36 units for in the neighborhood of $3 million each. So I wish them well. I hope it all pencils out in the end, because that is a crazy amount of time to spend on one project. All the while, since 2007, carrying the cost of the development, not only the ground that you own, but all of the soft costs that go into it, all of the design, all of the engineering. You're paying for all of that out of pocket for almost 20 years before you start finally seeing some cash coming in. And most of that cash coming in first goes to satisfy your bank debt. So they might not even see a profit until they get those final 2 units sold. You know, it is not an easy game to play. Next, we've got 2 stories here, and then we're going to wrap it up. The most expensive land ever sold on Lower Broadway, the development is now stalling out. The status of a multi-story building to accommodate a honky-tonk and eyed for a 3-parcel Sobro site remains unclear approximately 12 months after details emerged. Phoenix-based Fundamental Income Properties paid $16.25 million, setting a new per square foot record for Nashville, for the 0.05 acre lot at 201 Broadway. Okay, 0.05 acres for $16.25 million. The same buyer in 2015 paid $5 million for the neighboring 203 to 205 Broadway property. So this is an assemblage. They already owed 203 and 205, and then they went out and bought the adjacent 201 Broadway, which was only 0.05 acres, for $16 million. Scottsdale, Arizona-based Riot Hospitality Group is spearheading the redevelopment. So this is some type of a partnership between Riot Hospitality and Fundamental Income Properties. The total project cost could be approximately $35 million total. In May, Riot sought a permit that later allowed for food trucks to operate at the site. Not a good sign. When you're trying to cover some of your costs by letting food trucks park on your $16 million piece of dirt, that is not a good sign. Riot is seeking a 5-story, 31,630 square foot building. In August 2024, the Metro Historic Zoning Commission disapproved the proposed design plan from Riot. The future Lower Broadway business will be Riot's third in Nashville, joining Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row and Hand Cut Chop House, which is located in Sobro's Embassy Suites Hotel building. So this is their third project in Nashville, so they know what they're getting themselves into, but they didn't get their design approved, and it seems to me that they're kind of preparing to cover some of their costs while this project is stalling out. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that would be very much on trend for Nashville. And lastly, our final story of the day, a 2020 development on White Bridge Pike is now finally gaining steam. Efforts to undertake a mixed-use development planned on Nashville's west side near Trader Joe's grocery store and a Target remain ongoing. Charlotte-based Crescent Communities is seeking to develop 3.5 acres with the working title Novell Richland Creek. The building would offer 277 apartments and some ground-level retail and restaurant space. The address of the site is 92 White Bridge Road. They are also seeking specific plan rezoning for the site, which we just talked about, which is currently home to a vacant structure that most recently accommodated a Steinmart store. So if you know where that Steinmart store is, that's where they're planning this project with 277 apartments. In December 2021, Crescent placed this project on hold, at that point targeting a 285 unit apartment building, stressing what it felt was misguided citizen pushback. So this is an interesting topic, right? This is called NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. So anytime a developer is trying to do anything of consequence, for whatever reason, the neighbors come out with their pitchforks and they try to kill the transaction. Neighbors, a certain percentage of neighbors, even if it's 10% of neighbors, just want to see no change whatsoever. They want everything to stay exactly the same. So not only do developers have to overcome the challenges with government approval, with raising debt and equity capital, with borrowing money from banks, they also have to overcome citizen pushback so that they can get approval on these projects. It is such a crazy business to be in. There's no business that worries me more than the development business. So these guys that are out there getting it done, they deserve your respect. Crescent resumed the effort in mid-2024, right? So in 2021, they shut it down, stressing that they felt the citizen pushback was misguided. They sat on it for 3 years while they stewed, and now in mid-2024, they're starting to push through the approvals again. Now get this, they paid $45.3 million for the property in 2020, which also included the adjacent Trader Joe's property. So you're carrying $45 million since 2020, And now in 2025, you're still working to get the necessary approvals to build your apartments. The development business, y'all, is no joke. Trust me on this. I recently brought a building out of the ground myself, the first time I've ever done it, just for my personal use, nothing impressive compared to anything that we discussed today. But it took me over 2 years to get the project done, and I was moving as fast as I possibly could, and all the while carrying all those costs that I just mentioned. It is a game for big boys, and you better have deep pockets and you better have access to capital, because it's never been harder to borrow money. It is just a difficult thing to do. So I think I've beaten that horse to death, and I think we can now wrap up the show. So thank you so much for listening to the Free Speech Podcast, presented to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your AI-enhanced brokerage for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon.